Hi again. I am back with a follow-up to my previous video where I showed my process of bringing R3D NE footage from the Nikon or Nikon ZR into DaVinci Resolve for conversion to Rec 709, color correction, grading, noise reduction, all that stuff before exporting for whatever the end product is. In contrast to the last time where we did daytime footage, now we're going to do nighttime / low light footage, all of which was shot at 6400 ISO, except for this guy, which I accidentally, or not accidentally, but I don't know why I shot at 1600. Anyway, a disclaimer before we hop in. I am by no means an expert at this. This is by no means meant to be some kind of definitive guide on how to do it. This is just me showing how I do it, my process, in case it's helpful to anyone else. And if it is, great. Without further ado, let's hop in. We have these 5 clips, as I showed. I don't know that we'll be able to do all of them. We'll see. In order to save myself some time, and if you've used Resolve enough, you probably do this too, I created what's called a power grade for myself. That way I can skip a few steps. So what this does is when I drag it into the clip, then this populates the graph with this node tree that I created before. And if you don't know about power grades, lots of info on that on YouTube. So go ahead and do some searching. But anyway, this is my power grade, and it dropped in, again, these nodes that I typically use, starting with noise reduction, which I have disabled by default. These 2 color space transforms, which go from like red log to DaVinci White Gamut, and then back to red log. And any adjustments that I made happen within these 2. Then we go on to red conversion LUTs, which take the red log footage and turn it into Rec 709 for export. Just before that, an optional red creative LUT. And after that, also optional, this color tone diffuser and film grain, both of which I also turned off. So what you see right now is essentially the footage right out of camera, only with Rec 709 conversion being applied. And the Rec 709 conversion that we're doing, as I showed the last time, is using this LUT, this red LUT, which is the medium contrast and very soft highlight roll-off LUT. And I have some others that we may use at some point. We'll see. But that's the one that I default to. So what do we want to do to this guy? So we already have it converted to Rec 709. And if we like this and we want to just export it as it is, then that's fine. I don't want to do that. So typically, I will start by adding the creative LUT that I want to use. That way I have more or less like my look, and then I can adjust anything just based on that. So I'm going to grab my LUTs, or open my LUTs here, and I'm going to grab this LUT and throw it on there. I use this particular LUT a lot, which is the red film bias offset, one of my favorites. And I think we're going to be using it on this throughout. So there you go. And let's say that I like this, then great, export. I don't like this. This, for starters, is way too bright for me. We shot it, again, as I said, at 6400 ISO. That's fine. Typically, when it's low light, you want to be shooting on the high base ISO, but things might be too bright. You want to make sure, of course, that things are not clipping, which I think for the most part, we did okay here. There might be some of the background lights that could be clipping a little bit, but honestly, that's fine, and we can tone that down. But really, I just want to darken this. This is way too bright for me. So one easy way to do it, because this is raw footage, I can go to Camera Raw, change this guy here to clip, and then that exposes other settings here. I could either change my ISO to something like this. I actually like this, which is more or less the same thing as just doing like -2 stops. I think it's pretty much interchangeable. There might be some slight differences, but let's leave it like this, right? So we shot it at 6400, and then I am adjusting the exposure down by 2 stops. And let's say that I like this. Great. I might change this. Let's see. What else do I want to do? Is there anything that I want to do to the highlights? I think they're fine. Yeah, I don't think there's anything overtly bad about the highlights. So I think we can leave those alone for now. Is there anything that I want to do to their shadows? Do I want to bump them up a little bit? Maybe. What I can do is, one option that I have is I can go into my conversion LUTs again. And as I showed before, I'm using the medium contrast LUT, but maybe I can change it to low contrast. And that brings back a little bit more of the shadow information, maybe flattens down some of the highlights a bit too. So this might actually work. Sometimes with dark footage, this can help. Maybe using lower contrast LUTs, just lower contrast in general, but again, your mileage may vary. So let's say that I like this, then great. Boom, ship it, done, export. I think I want to do a couple more things to this guy. So for starters, I think in terms of color balance, I think it's fine. Or sorry, like between like highlights and shadows, brightness, exposure, I think we're okay. What I do want to do is I want to activate my color tone diffuser, which is one of my favorite things to use. And I activate diffusion and I, by default, crank it all the way up. And as you can see, I'm just hitting Shift F to just see a little more of it. It's creating this glow right here, which is kind of cool. I actually kind of like it, but maybe I'm going to turn it down a bit. Sometimes I'll just turn it all the way down and then turn it up slowly until I get to a point where I like it, which, yeah, I think this is okay. And I like the large radius. I think it gives it more of a faded look, which is what I aim for when I'm using this node specifically. Same thing goes for the shadow soft clip. If I activate this, it's going to give me, it's going to do two things. It's going to crush and fade the shadows, which I actually love. I love that look. It gives you more of a faded film look. And I think this is okay on the default. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit, maybe like 0.4. And maybe soften it. Maybe actually we can 0.44. And yeah, I think this is fine. Great. Love it. Anyway, so the next thing that we may want to do is apply noise reduction. And this is where it's tricky because this is going on YouTube. I don't know what the YouTube compression is going to do to this. It might look terrible once it's uploaded. It might not. It looks great on my screen. I'll tell you that much. But again, YouTube compression, it has a mind of its own. I don't know what it's going to do. Anyway, I don't think this needs noise reduction, to be honest. There might be a little bit of noise. Once again, I'm actually going to enable this just for the sake of it. But there's nothing applied just yet. But yeah, even if I zoom in, I mean, there's a minimal amount of noise. Sure, maybe we can attack some of it, mostly the chroma noise, which is the worst noise. As I said before, chroma noise is like those like green and magenta splotches that will show up on footage. Maybe it's not super evident here. Maybe if I intentionally, I mean, this is just intentional, just to prove what the noise does. I don't want it to look like this. You can see some of these color splotches showing up, and that is what chroma noise is, versus luminoise, which is more of like the white grain type stuff, which, you know, for R3D footage specifically, and maybe some others, it looks quite granular, almost like film grain, so it's not so bad. But chroma, always bad. I hate chroma noise, and if I can get rid of it, I will. So I'm going to do something to it. Well, let me just, before I do this, Jesus Christ, let me just go back to 6400. That's where we were. This is realistically what we're going to be seeing. And I think I see some splotches here. So what I'm going to do is like split luma and chroma. And as opposed to last time where I applied noise reduction via this panel down here, and this one, I'm just applying a noise reduction effect to the node, but it's the same thing. There might be some differences in terms of like speed. I think this one is a little faster, but maybe it's a little more cut down in some way. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so let's try and attack the chroma noise. So I'm going to turn it all the way up just to see if it's doing something, and yes, it does, but we don't have to go all the way up, maybe like halfway through. I think halfway through already is fine. And then for luma threshold, honestly, I mean, I don't think it needs a lot. I'm going to zoom in just to be more obvious with it. I'm going to do like 2. I think that's okay. That arguably might be too much. And again, disclaimer, I'm going to say this a million times. On my screen, this looks so clean. On YouTube, it might look like a mess. I really don't know, and I'm not going to know until it's uploaded. But just, again, fair warning to you. But yes, basically, I think we're done with this guy. One final thing that we could do is add film grain. I'm going to stay away from the film grain here. I want to see how clean this looks on YouTube before adding any grain. Maybe not. Maybe it would be better to add film grain because that will create some dithering, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm done with this one. Hope this all made sense. I'm going to move on to the next one. So here we are at the next clip. We're going to repeat the process of going into my gallery, grabbing this power grade, throwing it on there. And terrible, because I shot this at the wrong white balance. My mistake, happens. So what we're going to do is, first things first, go to camera raw, decode using clip. And yeah, change the color temperature. I'm going to say, what, like 3300? Sure. Maybe take down the tint to like 5, -5, sorry. Sure. Also way too bright, but we'll get there. Anyway, let's add our creative LUT once again, the film bias offset, which is the one I like, and I want to be consistent. Great. What do we want to do next? This is way too bright for me. Let's bring it down, either through the ISO or the exposure adjust. Let's do it with ISO this time. I say like 1600. Let's stick with that for now. Let's see what we can do with this. And I'm going to go here to my red conversion LUT. I'm going to change it to, again, by default, it's set to medium. I'm going to change it to low once again. And I think between 1600 ISO and low contrast, I think we're looking good. I think this is a good baseline. Okay, great. So what else do we want to do to this? I think it's looking, oh, I can't think of anything right now. Maybe we can just go here and turn down the highlights a bit. I don't know if it's all that necessary, to be honest, just maybe very slightly. But I think for the most part, it's fine. When it's just like subtle, you might as well just go into HDR and maybe just go into highlights. And you can kind of see them going down here in the graph. Sorry, not in the graph, in the waveform. And that does a little bit of something. We don't have to overdo it. Yeah, I think this looks more or less okay. Maybe not a super interesting scene to look at, but I don't know, I kind of like it. There's something here. What else can we do? I think, arguably, I think I could give it more contrast. So instead of using the low contrast, I'm going to go back to medium. And this works for me. I think this gives it more of like a moody vibe. And it's nighttime. It's okay to have shadows. Not everything has to be completely 100% lit all the time and flat. We don't need that. We've seen a lot of that already. So there's that. What else? Sure, let's go to this frame where this guy is kind of just hanging out here. Color tone diffuser. Turn it on. Let's go to diffusion and activate it. Crank up the radius, crank up the amount. You see this guy glowing here, maybe too much. Bring it back down, there we are, somewhere in the middle. And then shadow clip, once again, way too much. Typically I'll start around 0.3 and see what that does, and then maybe I'll go up or down. I think 0.3 works. Maybe we could go down from that, 0.25. Sure, 0.25 is fine. Great, so we're done with this guy, all right? Well, noise reduction, again, as in the previous one, this looks so clean on my screen. Disclaimer, once again, I don't know what YouTube's doing. On my screen, this looks so clean already. I don't think we need to do any noise reduction, but let's do it for the sake of doing it. So let's, where could we see noise, or the most obvious noise? Maybe in these clouds? Yeah, maybe we can see some chroma noise here. So, but again, so subtle, so granular, it's barely visible when you're playing it like an actual size, right? Full screen, not all that visible. But yeah, if we're zooming in like this at 200% pixel peeping, then yeah, of course. But yeah, let's do it. Let's just split luma and chroma in our noise reduction panel, or node, and then chroma threshold, once again, bring it about halfway. That already looks fine. Luma threshold, 12, 2. And once again, on my screen, so clean. This is like squeaky clean. Perhaps too clean, even. Perhaps we don't even need to, as I said, maybe we just do the chroma noise reduction and then just like leave the luma noise alone. And that gives it a little bit more of a granular look. But since we're trying to clean it up for and see what YouTube does with it, I'm going to bring it back up to 2 on the luma, maybe even 3. Let's overdo it with this one just to see what YouTube does with it. And I feel like I'm done. Maybe I want to saturate it a little bit, add a little saturation. And I may want to do that to the previous one as well, which I didn't do. I don't know if it needs it that much, but maybe I'll just do like a little bit. If I go to color slice here, I just do like 1.2. That added a little something. I'm not mad at it. There's, of course, much more intelligent and expert ways of applying saturation. This is just my lazy way of doing it. And if I like the way it looks, then fine, it's done. So on that note, we're done with this one. Let's see if we have more time, some time to do the other ones. Well, one good thing about this one is that we can just copy paste pretty much the same scene, and it should be more or less okay. I guess maybe I exposed this one slightly differently. I know that I shot it at the same ISO, but I might have maybe adjusted my aperture to something different. I can't remember. So, hey, no big deal. We can just either bump up the ISO to say, I don't know, maybe 3200. Yeah, seems about right. Maybe a little bit more, maybe like 4000. Again, as I said, we shot this at 64. So I feel like anything below that should just be generally cleaner. I could be wrong about that. But this already looks fine. This is looking a little too intense right here. So I want to see if we can clean that up. Let's see. One thing I like about this frame is that you have this guy walking by. You have this dragon just shooting a fireball. You have someone here in the window doing something. So yeah, I like this frame. Let's stick to this frame and just hide these clips. And I'm going to zoom in and see if we can work on these signs. Specifically these 2 guys that are looking a little blown out. I'm going to disable the diffuser for now. I think it's just doing a lot right now, as you can see. And let's see if we can do something about these highlights. So I know that we already did this in the HDR panel. I'm going to reset that. And I'm going to do it again from scratch. So I'm going to start bringing down the lights, first of all. And I just want to try and make sure that I don't really over flatten things. So lights, bring it down a bit. Highlights, bring them down a bit as well. If I overdo it, then yeah, it starts looking really flat, as you can see here. We don't necessarily want that. So, but maybe around here. Again, we're risking flattening it out a little bit, but it's fine. But then what I do is, like, in order to create more because again, this is looking, a little flat. To create more contrast in between the highlights, or yeah, among the highlights, then what I do is I'll bring the speculars, and the speculars is basically the very brights close to white, and bring them back up. So what that does is create separation or contrast between the very brightest brights and the lowest level of the brights. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know, it's doing something. Maybe it's still a little too flat, but we can dial back. We don't want to spend too much time here doing this. Let's say that that's about as far as we can take it, or we want to take it. So, okay, let's stop there. A little more in the specular. Sometimes it helps to increase this fall off. Kind of makes things a little more gradual. And yeah, let's not spend all night on this. Let's say that we're okay with this. The one last thing that I might do is actually saturate these highlights. It also can help. I'm going to really overdo it just to make it obvious. But then I dial it back, so maybe like 1.3. And then same thing with highlights. Overdo it, and maybe like 1 point, not even 3, maybe like 1.2. And even that might be a little too much. Let's do 1.2 for both of these, and I'll leave specular alone. And, you know, that's something. Maybe arguably a little too much. You know, you always risk flattening things out. But, you know, if you wanted to get more visibility on these signs, that is one way to do it. And then I can re-enable my diffuser. Maybe it's a little too intense. Bring it back down to something that makes a little more sense, like here. Maybe bring down the radius in this case. Actually, no. Bring up the radius, lower the intensity. And in terms of the soft clip, yeah, I think this is right. This is fine. I might even like crank it up a little bit more, maybe 0.3. And this is good. I think this works. And we have this guy riding by. And yeah, I'm happy with this. I don't think we need to do anything else here. So yeah, ship it, done. Again, as I said before, I'm refraining from using any film grain. Also noise reduction, I'm just applying the same noise reduction as in the previous clip. They're so similar that it should translate just fine. And yeah, just from looking at this, yes, it makes sense. Once again, disclaimer, I don't know what YouTube is doing with its compression. I don't know if it's absolutely destroying the footage or not, but on my screen, on DaVinci Resolve, this looks absolutely clean and beautiful. Just FYI. All right, so do we have time for maybe one more? Maybe one more. So I'm actually going to skip to this guy just to, I don't know, maybe show something about very low light footage. So this is not exactly the most exciting footage, but I think it's going to be very dark. This is a very dark area, and maybe we can show how we can recover a lot of the shadow info. So I'm going to grab this guy here once again, drag it in, and you can see right away, quite noisy, quite, you know, it's hard to make out what's going on here. Not totally lost though. That's the thing. We'll see. We'll see that's not. So first things first, let's go to camera raw. I'm going to change it to clip. I think the color temperature is too low. I'm going to do maybe like 4,000. Maybe that's too high. 3,800. And again, find my creative LUT. Let's stay consistent. Film bias offset, that's fine. And we're ready to do something. So what do we want to do? Like, let's say that we really want to recover what's going on here. You know, there's a couple ways of doing it. We can definitely like bump up the shadows. I've found that a good way to kind of like cheat a little bit is to, again, by default, we have medium contrast. If we change it to low contrast, we get a lot more. And if we change it to no contrast, we get even more. Of course, this is like super flat right now. I don't know that I'd ever want this to look this flat. But this is just, again, just to prove a point. Just to prove that you definitely can recover a lot of shadow info. And we'll see what else we can do about it. Obviously, we're going to have to apply some aggressive noise reduction. That is a given. So I think we'll do that nowish. First, maybe I want to apply a little saturation because the flattening also desaturates a lot. So again, just to be lazy, I'm going to go into the global saturation here and the color slice. I'm going to do like 1.5. 1.5. Here we go. Maybe a bit much, but maybe like 1.33. 1 1/3. And great. Fantastic. Done. Well, yeah, let's go into noise reduction. Let's enable that. Well, enable the node. By default, I don't have any applied. So what are we going to do here? Of course, as you can see, quite grainy, quite noisy. And you can even see a little bit of flickering, right? Which some people complain about, but let's see what we can do about that. And again, quote unquote, you can see it. Maybe you can't see it. I don't know what YouTube's doing. But again, we go here. For this one, I'm going to change it to better. The motion estimate for the temporal. The motion range, yeah, small is fine. Then I'm going to split luma and chroma. I'm going to crank up the chroma all the way up. There's a lot of chroma noise here. And the luma, I'm going to be somewhat aggressive with it. I'm going to start with 10. And I mean, that already cleans up quite a bit. We're looking at it full screen. That really cleaned up quite a bit. From like here, which is quite messy, to here. I think this is doing a pretty good job. And again, we're recovering all these, dark areas that were, all these shadows that were before just like dark. And you can see this like chair and I think it's a bench or whatever it is. You can see more of like the rooftop detail. Again, I don't think there's anything that interesting here that I would really want to do this for, but just to show that you can. And you can. And we can even be more aggressive with it if we wanted to also add, let's maybe crank up the luma threshold even more. It's fine. We could also crank up the spatial noise reduction, which I haven't applied yet. One thing I did find about this specific noise reduction via the effects on the nodes versus this one is that somehow this one's slower. It's heavier for some reason. I think I mentioned that before. So I'm going to keep in mind what I just did here. I'm going to reset node grade. Of course, that's going to get rid of all the noise reduction. And I'm going to do it down here via motion effects. And we get basically the same settings. So again, what did I do? 5 frames, better. Motion range, I think small is fine because there's not a lot of movement going on. And unlink these, chroma all the way up, luma like 10, or did I do 15? 15. And then I'm going to do better on the spatial, and then I'm going to do like 20. That's a lot actually, like 10. And look at that. Super clean footage, quote unquote, at least on my screen. And again, I don't know how much of this is translating to YouTube, but of course, one trade-off of aggressive noise reduction is that, well, here's a trade-off, right? Through noise reduction, you get what people call more dynamic range, but you're also going to lose some detail, right? And you're always going to have to think about like where the trade-off is, like what are you willing to sacrifice to get the, what thing are you willing to sacrifice to get the other, right? Do you want much cleaner shadows that you can really recover aggressively? Then you're probably going to have to sacrifice a little detail. And this is how, all those dynamic range lab tests work, right? Like footage that comes out of camera already with really aggressive dynamic range baked in scores higher on those tests because those tests, are not. So, funny thing, my lav mic died while I was about to go in on a little bit of a rant about these lab tests and charts and whatnot. And maybe it was a sign from the camera gods that maybe I should not open up that can of worms. So I'm going to do my best to kind of narrate what is going on from what I remember, which is, I'm talking about, again, how we managed to take this footage. I'm basically just taking it to like square one where we were before we did anything. and seeing how, the footage is actually quite dark, very deep shadows. And again, showing how we went through the process of doing some aggressive shadow recovery as well as aggressive noise reduction, which really allowed us to get a lot of info from the shadows again, which goes to prove that this footage, specifically R3D NE footage, is actually quite capable. It really has a lot of info. I think if you are considering a ZR and just like R3D NE footage altogether, I don't think there's anything to be concerned about, to be honest. I think you'll be perfectly fine. And honestly, I don't think that I myself would ever necessarily grade or correct footage like this aggressively, which would require for it to be quite flat. But this is just to show that you can. But not me. I think I'd rather have it be quite a bit darker, or maybe not necessarily darker, but instead just higher contrast, which is why I'm changing back to medium contrast. I actually don't mind this at all. I think this contrast looks great. I think we are a little too afraid of contrast nowadays, a little too afraid of shadows. I mean, no pun intended. And I think it's fine. Not everything needs to be completely 100% lit. But then to split the difference, I'm just going into low contrast instead of medium contrast. And we still get plenty of good shadow information in there without looking too flat. So, and then I go on to reactivate the color tone diffuser, which is, one of my favorite nodes, one of my favorite things to do. Again, as usual, crank up the diffusion just to see what it's doing, and then just bring it down to an acceptable level. And same thing with a shadow clip, obviously by default too aggressive, but then we just bring it down to something that feels acceptable, which typically I'll do around 0.3 and then go up or down from there, depending on, taste, I suppose. And I've concluded that this looks fine. Again, not the most exciting footage to look at, but it works. And I think it helped us prove some points, hopefully. So yeah, I decided to cut some stuff here that wasn't all that important. Anyway, we weren't able to get to all 5 clips, but I'm hoping that 4 out of 5 was enough to get some points across and in general was helpful. And if it was, that's great. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them with my limited knowledge. Just be cool. That's all I ask. Anyway, hope to have more videos to share in the future, TBD. And if I do, then I'll make sure that I have a fully charged lav. Anyway, thanks again for watching. Goodbye.